Welcome everyone to the second in the webinar series, the CFO Academy. Today's topic is how to avoid losing sleep when your CEO says it's all changed, and we'll be focusing on the ability to do rapid forecasting and the learns that we've learned over the past few years implementing forecasting budgeting solutions for organisations. So first of all, it's the second in the series. The first one is basically online and available now, so you can look at that at any point in time, and this one will be made available for your perusal as well. So welcome people who didn't join last time. I hope this is stimulating and interesting. So first of all, just a quick way on how you can interact. You have a questions box, which is in the panel on your right-hand side. At any point in time, please do put a question in there. What I'll do is I'll leave time for questions at the end and cover those off. So feel free to add that, and there'll be a little reminder about that later on in the thing to give you a couple of minutes before the end of the broadcast so that we can take advantage of the opportunity to discuss this across the forum. So as I said, this is episode 2. Episode 1 was around, lessons from the field, what stops us rolling, and forecasting and continuous planning. Today we're actually looking at this topic in mind. So we're looking at the risks and problems of not being able to rapidly plan for change, and some considerations and case study examples, and the ability to do bottom-up, middle-out, top-down, what-if, and scenario analysis. So first of all, I think, again, bringing in the theme from the last one, change is everywhere. I did an extract from Google just a few weeks ago, and as you can see, all the news items on there just sort of iterate the fact that change is constant, and with change brings risk, and our ability to plan for change is obviously key to our business success. So with that in mind, what's your business moment? I've just got 2 examples here of real-life scenarios from the last 12 months of engagements with different organisations. Classic one basically here was a minister's office contacting a large quasi-government agency and asking for the latest expenditure projection on a major infrastructure project. The minister had a press conference in 1 hour. How likely is your organisation to provide a confident response to that type of request? I've got another example. This is one around an executive in an educational organisation requiring immediate forecasts and responses into respect to fees and grant revenues to support some key decisions real-time in committee. And that was put to the finance officer within that committee meeting, and that was the expectation. We need to know now. So timing is everything. So what are the considerations? I've got many more examples over and above the 2 I've just used. It's not good enough just to know about the now, the past, and the present. We must have confidence in the future, in the likely, okay, across all horizons, okay, and we might just have information, but we need insight. We need the ability to model our business. We need the ability to optimize, to simulate basically, and plan for different scenarios and make the appropriate decisions. So with that in mind, I started to consider what the 4 ingredients for success in forecasting might be from all of past experiences, and I thought I'd boil it down into this matrix, which I think could be a pretty useful tool in your organisation to actually have a conversation and place your organisation in terms of your success. I think there are 4 attributes to this matrix. One is speed, obviously your ability to rapidly respond to change. The second one is the basis, and so to have proper rationale and building blocks for the decisions you make based on things that are going around in your organisation, based on past historical records, maybe the context and external factors. To have participation, in other words, to leverage business input, that tacit experience and expertise that is out there in the organisation, because they're on the front line and they're really where the business decisions are being made. So the ability to leverage that within your forecasting, I think, is critical. You really got to plan in operational terms, and these are ultimately the owners. And the last ingredient I would call confidence. Okay, so it's interesting that in that case of that minister's request, the organisation in mind, that quasi-government agency that we were dealing with, felt they only had 50% confidence levels in the information that they had or could respond to for that minister's request. So that they actually had to caveat the response, so that the minister provided a caveat himself in the press conference, or actually informed the minister's office that they had to wait 2 or 3 days for a response. Now, obviously, that level of confidence provides some type of risk and uncertainty in order to respond to appropriate decision support. So all those affect the quality of the outcome and the decision support. And there are some interdependencies here. I think confidence about forecasts, and plans and models can be achieved if there's a strong basis or rationale and if there's participation. But it can be lost, okay, if that's done in an untimely basis. Okay, so there are some if basically you're going to get that forecast 3 months late, then obviously your confidence disappears basically in the light of that changing environment. So I started to think about what success looked like, and I think success would in effect be something that covers all 4 facets of that spectrum and as wide a sweet spot as possible. What risk would look like really is a very small sweet spot, and that really then means there's a lack of participation, a lack of rationale. You're inefficient basically in terms of the speed at which you plan. There is low levels of confidence. So the question I pose is where, from an organisational viewpoint, is your sweet spot? And I started to look back at past experiences and the different organisations that we deal with over a very diverse range of different verticals and industries. Okay, and you could really kind of see a number of different scenarios coming out from our engagements. And the first one I would say is the kind of Ivory Tower scenario, where there's often a lot of modelling. There's some basis for it. There is a finance team or someone responsible for planning and forecasting who's often responsive, fast to provide scenario analysis, forecasts, has some rationale, but there's really efficiency over effectiveness because basically it's not involving the business community. It's kind of an Ivory Tower approach. It's done in isolation from the different business inputs, and the business isn't involved. So really, it doesn't reflect the true circumstances of the organisation. And in these cases, I often find that really the business community has low levels of confidence in the outputs and what's going on, and often is unaware, for instance. They're not seen as being critical to the process. I saw one organisation in the financial services sector, for instance, where the CFO and the business analyst were modelling things like margin analysis on loans and so on, critical things that made a difference to the organisation, but really in a very detached sense. And they even got to the point of actually cutting and pasting different results into a summary spreadsheet. And the whole thing was disconnected and had little traceability back to the organisation. That's what I call the Ivory Tower. Now, the reality is that often we'll find the Ivory Tower is the Ivory Tower because the constraints of the technology used. Quite often it's spreadsheets, and spreadsheets aren't very good at proper rationale and basis and incorporating results from different systems within the business, like ERPs, and they're not good at participation. So to a certain extent, I think there's always an expectation that they want to move away from the Ivory Tower approach, but really it's the technology that is the constraint. The second scenario is what I call the bolted horse. Now here there is a focus on participation. I think there's a real drive for it. These organisations see the need in it, in fact, and will work hard to actually provide that. And there'll be some basis for it. But really, because they're using inappropriate technology, sometimes spreadsheets and so on, that whole process is too slow. You're involved in 3 to 4 month planning exercises, so doing something like a rapid forecast and responding to a what if based on some type of rationale is highly likely to produce a result in effective time. And so there really is no efficiency and no effectiveness and a high degree of risk. The third scenario I thought of was the kind of illusion. Now this is a difficult thing for an organisation to find themselves in, because there is a level of confidence by key stakeholders. They get the results they want quickly. There is participation, but there is no business modelling. There is no rationale on which basically those drivers are producing results. It might be done purely on a financial perspective, very detached from really the organisational drivers. And so they feel that they have the numbers at their fingertips, but there's little basis. It's misguided and often, like I said, points to a high degree of risk because there really is no awareness of the gap. So if we think about where your organisation is, like I said, maybe a useful exercise is to just think of your business within these terms. Where would you be, and engage your organisation with a discussion around that. I find this a very useful tool basically to help people place where they are so they can basically start to actually make plans for improvement. Now, I also want to think about the impact of technology on that. If you have an appropriate technology that handles, again, as big a sweet spot as possible across the breadth of that success matrix, again, you have a capacity for things like rapid planning and reporting. You have analysis and decision support for executive and key stakeholders. You have that based on business model drivers and internal, external, sucking in information from an internal ERPs, whatever it might be, and external sources. So really, in touch with the true drivers for the business. And you have something that provides online self-service, intuitive role-based participation, so you get really real ownership. And really, obviously, there is no technology constraint. You can now focus on what I call the quality of the outcome and the decision support. So I think another thing that you could potentially do is place your current technology in terms of which sweet spot it covers. So not just from an organizational viewpoint, challenge yourself, where am I, but from a technology viewpoint, challenge yourself too. Now what does that mean really? The type of solutions that we introduce into organizations provides an holistic single platform for addressing all this. For participation across as many roles within the organization as required, to provide rapid planning, and to handle every potential basis for instance, forecasting. So from something like top-down to bottom-up, based on business drivers, to what-if and combinations thereof. So just go back to those examples in the first instance. With an appropriate platform to address that, that organisation, that quasi-government organisation, was able within about 3 months to move from a budgeting, doing annual budgets basically in 4-month time horizons, to being able to actually produce a single result back to that minister's request within the phone call. Okay, so they went from 50% confidence levels to 99% confidence levels, and the ability to respond to that minister's request there and then. Okay, no 2 or 3 day waits, no caveats basically, but the ability to actually know exactly where they were in terms of long-term costs over large infrastructure projects leading over 20 to 30 years. In the school example, what I want to do there is I'll just have a little bit more of a deeper dive on that case study moment. Remember, the scenario was basically they wanted in committee to know effectively the impact of changes to student numbers and grants. would have basically on their financial position now. So in each one of these webinar series, I'll pick a case study from a particular vertical. Last time we picked a government one, next time it will be different. We've got a very diverse range of examples, and this particular one I'll focus on one within the education sector. Like I said, it could be any. So the first thing we did for this particular establishment is we again took them from an annual budgeting issue, providing that single platform for every particular combination of bottom-up, top-down, what-if analysis. Importantly, okay, we were able to provide online participation up to 80 particular budget managers who previously felt detached and non-participatory, didn't own really the planning processes. To handle modelling over student grants and fees, those are the key drivers within the organisation from a bottom-up perspective. To look at things like asset and master planning, resource expenditure, and look at things like liabilities, funding. So the full ability to actually model that organisation and actually get a robust outcome at the end that people had confidence in, and the ability to quickly touch that and update and actually see what a new position would be, and look at all those different variations in terms of the good, bad, and possible scenarios. But all came down to the fact that within that single committee meeting, they now have a what-if scenario analysis dashboard which they can actually respond to any type of challenging question, whether it's the impact on a change in interest on loans, whether it's an impact on salaries or whatever, a recurrent surplus percentage. Doesn't really make a difference. They're now, the CFO now feels that they can actually, or the person responsible in the finance office now sees they're able to actually sit down and, in their own words, they say their biggest win is the ability to vary student numbers and percentage fee increases, one click of a button, in a committee meeting and provide that response. So they've gone from virtually 3 months or 4 months behind to actually being in touch with where the future projections for the organisation are. So with that in mind, what I want you to do is just put a little reminder there. If you've got any questions, do start to key them in. I will respond to those at the end, so just a little bit of a reminder. Like I said, I hope that was useful. I think the thing I'm saying is there's a couple of tools there that you can use in your organisation to place yourself. Just a little reminder about where we'll be going for our next session. I've talked about that impact for technology, speed, confidence, basis, participation. Obviously, what I've been talking about is a technology that covers every aspect of that, from reporting, analysis, simulation, budget planning, forecasting, strategy management, within one product, one vision, one technology. Okay, so that's what I've been touching on in the last 2 sessions. I've actually been talking about a product called Board Corporate Performance Management. Here's a little bit of an overview of it. I'm only touching on this now because next time in the next webinar we'll be having what I call a solution moment. This webinar series will go from, for instance, like thought leadership, basically, and tools and techniques and things to actually address change. And now and again we're going to have a session explicitly on the product, and next time will be one of those. So do join us. Basically, it'll be on the 26th of July at 10 a.m. and that's called an under the hood solution moment. The user experience, we'll be touching a little bit more on that. So I think we do have time for questions. I'll just check my question panel, and I have a couple. An interesting one here is, first of all, the question is, I recognise myself as belonging to one of those scenarios. Not a particular one, but one of those. How do I move forward? And I don't think my organisation recognises it themselves. So it's a very good question. So how do you actually, if you recognise yourself in one of these states, how do you kind of move forward? How do you get improvement? How do you challenge the business? I think first thing is you could use a tool like this to have a discussion. Put it up in your business and say, well, where are we? and get some type of agreement, because I think awareness is the first sign of improvement. I think the second thing I'd say is that even with that educational example, and some of the examples I used last week, is we started with an engagement, a discovery exercise that allowed them to move very rapidly in terms of corporate performance maturity from that unaware state to very sophisticated planning and forecasting techniques within the engagement of about 3 months. So we can do that. So I would say, have a discussion with us. We can facilitate that change within your organisation. I've got one other question here. Again, a nice one. I think this is a good one. It's definitely a topic for another session as well. A bit of a challenging question. It says, in order to gain confidence, do we just need good reporting and analysis? Good reporting and analysis has to cover every part of that spectrum, past, present, and future. Reporting analysis just over past and present, okay, it's useful, absolutely, but you need to be able to model the future. You need something that basically allows you to plan in business terms. So you need a modeling aspect to your forecasting, I think. Otherwise, you're just going to get some kind of mechanical, result. So I would say, no, reporting and analysis is useful. You need reporting analysis across your past, present, and future. But basically, don't forget about modeling. You need to relate it to how your business works and put it in business terms. And that makes sense to your organisation as well. So I would say that, yeah, it's a facet, but it by itself, it won't allow you to forecast in business terms. But there were good questions. I don't think I have any more questions. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is remind you that we do have a LinkedIn CFO Academy group, and we do have these events every 2 weeks. Like I said, the next one will be a solution moment. If you want to know more now, then obviously you can contact us on the phone number there and the email address. Anything about our case studies, the solutions, technology, the methods, do post away. And the other thing I would remind you is we really are changing these topics to reflect interest. And so we've got an idea of the program, but if you've got some good ideas, or you want to even make one of these forums more a discussion panel around a specific topic, do let us know, because we can do exactly that. So again, thank you very much for your time today, and I'll see you all again. Thank you.